The manila envelope landed on my desk with a soft thud, its contents threatening to spill my carefully constructed world into chaos. "You might want to take a look at this, Mrs. Ray," said Terrence, the private investigator I'd hired last week. His expression told me everything I needed to know. We'd finally found something. My name is Presley, and 6 months ago, I would have laughed if someone told me I'd be hiring a PI to investigate my mother-in-law. But here I was, hands trembling as I reached for the envelope that could change everything. "Your mother-in-law's been busy," Terrence said, taking a seat across from me. "Those bank statements show transfers totaling over $2 million to offshore accounts, all under different shell companies." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Does Omar know about any of this? From what we can tell, your husband's signature was forged on most of these documents." The office suddenly felt too small, too warm. Through the window, I could see my 6-year-old daughter Summer playing in the backyard with her nanny. The sight of her golden curls bouncing as she chased butterflies made my chest tighten. This was why I was fighting. This was why I couldn't let Stephanie win. "Mrs. Ray, Presley," Terrence leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "This is exactly what we needed. Stephanie's trying to paint you as an unfit mother in court, but these documents prove she's been embezzling from your husband's company for years." I nodded, remembering the day 3 weeks ago when I was served with custody papers. Stephanie had somehow convinced Omar that I was unstable, unfit to care for Summer. The look in his eyes when he told me he agreed with his mother, it still haunts me. My phone buzzed, speaking of the devil. "Presley, dear," Stephanie's saccharine voice dripped through the speaker. "I hope you're having a lovely afternoon. I just wanted to remind you about Summer's dental appointment tomorrow. I'll be picking her up from school." "No, you won't," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "The custody arrangement hasn't changed, Stephanie. I'm taking her." "Oh, sweetheart," she chuckled. "We both know it's just a matter of time. Omar agrees that Summer needs stability. A mother who doesn't run background checks on her mother-in-law." My eyes met Terrence's across the desk. If she only knew. "I have to go, Stephanie. Goodbye." I hung up before she could respond. "She's getting cocky," Terrence observed. "That's good for us. People make mistakes when they're overconfident." I started sorting through the documents, my legal pad filling with notes. "We need to show these to Faith," I said, referring to my attorney. "She'll know how to use this in court. Already called her. She's on her way." Terrence stood, adjusting his jacket. "One more thing. We found something else. Stephanie's been meeting with Judge Howard's clerk 3 times in the past week." My head snapped up. "She's trying to influence the judge?" "Looks that way. I have photos, timestamps, everything. Faith can file a motion to have Judge Howard recused." The sound of the back door sliding open caught my attention. Summer bounded in, her face flushed from playing. "Mommy, look what I found!" She held up a perfect monarch butterfly wing, her eyes sparkling. "That's beautiful, baby," I said, quickly sliding the documents into my desk drawer. "Why don't you go wash up for dinner?" As Summer skipped away, I turned back to Terrence. "How much time do we need?" "Give me 2 more days. I want to follow the money trail completely before we move forward. We only get one shot at this, Presley. We need to make it count." I walked him to the door, my mind racing with possibilities. Just before he left, he turned back. "You're doing the right thing, you know, standing up to her." "I know," I said quietly. "I just hope Omar sees it that way when this is all over." After Terrence left, I stood at the window watching Summer play. 6 years ago, when I married Omar, I thought I was joining a family. Instead, I found myself in a war with a woman who'd spent decades perfecting the art of manipulation. But as I watched my daughter's innocent play, I knew this was a battle I couldn't afford to lose. The manila envelope sat heavy in my desk drawer, a weapon more powerful than any I could have imagined. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Faith, and we'd begin planning our strategy. But tonight, I needed to be just Mom. Summer deserved that much normalcy in the storm that was coming. I heard Omar's car pull into the driveway, and my heart clenched. Soon, he'd have to choose between his mother's lies and the truth. I just prayed he'd be strong enough to make the right choice. Faith's office always reminded me of a war room, with its wall of legal books and the massive whiteboard covered in timelines and sticky notes. Today, it felt like we were finally planning our counterattack. "This is gold," Faith said, spreading the documents across her desk. "Pure gold." Her normally composed demeanor cracked with excitement as she examined each paper. "Stephanie's not just manipulating family dynamics. She's committed serious financial crimes." "But will it help us keep Summer?" I asked, leaning forward in my chair. "Presley, this changes everything." Faith started marking sections with a yellow highlighter. "We can prove Stephanie's not just an overbearing mother-in-law. She's a criminal who's been stealing from her own son's company. No judge will grant custody to someone under investigation for fraud." Terrence knocked and entered, carrying a thick folder. "Ladies, we've got more. Those meetings with Judge Howard's clerk, they weren't just meetings." He pulled out several photographs, laying them on the desk. They were payoffs. Faith picked up the photos, her eyes widening. "Is that what I think it is?" "An envelope full of cash?" "Yes." Terrence sat down beside me. I got close enough with the telephoto lens to see the bills. "We're talking serious money here." My phone buzzed. A text from Omar. "Where are you? Mom says you missed Summer's dental appointment." "Damn it," I muttered, showing Faith the message. "Stephanie's trying to create a paper trail of negligence." Faith grabbed her phone, dialing quickly. "Hi, Dr. Miller's office? This is Faith Long, Presley Ray's attorney. I need written confirmation that Summer Ray's appointment is actually scheduled for next week, not today." "Yes, I'll hold." While Faith handled the dental office, I texted Omar back. "The appointment is next Thursday. Check the calendar I shared with you. Stephanie's lying." "We need to move fast," Terrence said, pulling out more photos. "Stephanie's getting sloppy. Yesterday she met with someone from the SEC. Looked like she was trying to cover her tracks." Faith hung up the phone with a satisfied smile. "Got it. They're emailing confirmation of next week's appointment right now. One more lie we can prove in court." "What about Omar?" I asked. "How do we handle him?" "Carefully," Faith replied. "He's both victim and potential witness. Stephanie's been stealing from him for years, but he's also been unknowingly signing some of these documents." My phone rang. Omar again. Faith nodded, and I answered on speaker. "Presley, what's going on? Mom's upset about the appointment." "Omar, we need to talk. Not about appointments. About your company's finances." Silence on the other end. Then, "What about them?" "I have proof that your mother has been embezzling funds. Millions, Omar, through shell companies." "That's ridiculous," he scoffed, but his voice wavered. "You're just trying to turn me against her." "Check your email," Faith cut in. "I just sent you copies of transfers with your forged signature. Take them to your accountant if you don't believe us." More silence. Then the sound of typing. "Oh my God," he whispered. These can't be real." "They're real," Terrence spoke up. "And there's more. Your mother's trying to bribe court officials in your custody case." Omar's voice cracked. "I need time to process this." "You have until tomorrow morning," Faith said firmly. "Then we're filing these documents with the court. Your mother will likely face criminal charges." After the call ended, I slumped in my chair. "He sounds devastated." "Better devastated than deceived," Faith said, gathering the documents. "Now let's talk strategy. Tomorrow morning we file a motion to recuse Judge Howard and submit evidence of Stephanie's financial crimes. We'll request an emergency hearing with a new judge." "What about Summer?" I asked. "How do we protect her from all this?" "By winning," Faith said simply. "Which we will. Stephanie's house of cards is about to collapse." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Omar. "I just talked to our accountant. He's found irregularities going back years. I'm so sorry, Presley. I should have listened to you." I showed the message to Faith, who nodded approvingly. "That's good. We need him on our side." "Or at least not on hers," Terrence added. As I left Faith's office that evening, I felt lighter than I had in months. The weight of Stephanie's manipulation was lifting, replaced by the strength of truth and evidence. Tomorrow would be hard, possibly the hardest day yet, but for the first time, I knew we could win. I picked up Summer from her after-school program, hugging her extra tight. "How about pizza for dinner?" I suggested. "Can we get the one with pineapple that Grandma says is gross?" I smiled, remembering Stephanie's countless criticisms of my food choices. Absolutely, baby. All the pineapple you want. The courthouse steps felt steeper than usual this morning. Summer's small hand gripped mine tightly as we climbed, her other hand clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Omar waited at the top, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Daddy! Summer ran to him, and he scooped her up, holding her close. Hey, princess! His voice cracked. Aunt Jessica is going to take you to get ice cream while Mommy and Daddy talk to some people, okay? After Summer left with Omar's sister, he turned to me. Presley, I spent all night going through the company records. It's worse than we thought. Mom didn't just steal from the business. She's been moving money from my personal accounts too, even Summer's college fund. Before I could respond, Stephanie's voice rang out behind us. Omar, darling, what are you doing here so early? She glided up the steps in her designer suit, perfectly coiffed as always. The sight of her made my stomach turn. Don't darling me, Mom. Omar's voice was ice. We need to talk about the $2 million you stole from my company. Stephanie's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. I don't know what lies your wife has been feeding you, but... Save it, Faith interrupted, appearing with a thick folder under her arm. We have copies of every transfer, every forged signature, and evidence of your attempts to bribe court officials. Would you like to explain those to the judge, or shall I? The color drained from Stephanie's face. Omar, you can't believe... I already called the police, Omar cut in. They're reviewing the evidence right now. How could you do this, Mom? To your own son? Everything I did was for this family, Stephanie hissed, her composed facade cracking. That woman, she jabbed a finger at me, she's never been good enough for you. I was protecting our legacy. By stealing from your granddaughter's college fund? I stepped forward. By trying to take her away from her mother? Mrs. Mann, a stern voice called from behind us. We turned to see two police detectives approaching. We need you to come with us. This is ridiculous, Stephanie sputtered. I have rights. I have... The right to remain silent, one detective said, taking her arm, which I suggest you exercise. As they led Stephanie away, I caught a glimpse of her face. The mask of perfection had shattered, revealing something ugly and desperate underneath. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Faith touched my arm. We need to get inside. Judge Martinez is waiting. She's taken over the case after we submitted evidence of Judge Howard's clerk accepting bribes. Inside the courtroom, everything moved quickly. Faith presented our evidence methodically, her voice steady as she detailed Stephanie's crimes. Omar testified about discovering the theft. When it was my turn to speak, I focused on Summer, her happiness, her stability, her need for both parents in her life. Your Honor, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I never wanted this fight. I just wanted to protect my daughter from someone who puts her own interests above everyone else's, even her own family's. Judge Martinez reviewed the documents carefully, her expression grave. Given the evidence presented, including Mrs. Mann's attempted interference with court proceedings and her pending criminal charges, I'm granting full custody to Mrs. Ray with generous visitation rights for Mr. Ray. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Mrs. Mann from contacting the child or her parents until criminal proceedings are concluded. Relief flooded through me. It was over. Outside the courtroom, Omar caught my arm. Presley, I don't know how to apologize. All these years, I let her manipulate me, let her come between us. She's your mother, Omar. You wanted to believe the best about her. Can we try to fix this? Us? His eyes were hopeful but uncertain. I don't know, I answered honestly. But we can start by being better parents to Summer, together. He nodded, understanding this wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Later that evening, as Summer and I built a pillow fort in the living room, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Stephanie's arrest was making headlines. The company's board had launched a full investigation, and the SEC was involved. Mommy, is Grandma in trouble? Summer asked, peeking at my phone. I pulled her close. Yes, baby. Grandma did some bad things, and now she has to face the consequences. Like when I drew on the walls and had to clean them. I laughed softly. Something like that. but much bigger. As we snuggled in our fort, reading stories and sharing secrets, I realized that sometimes winning doesn't feel like you expected. There was no joy in Stephanie's downfall, only relief that the truth had finally come to light, and maybe that was enough. "Mommy, why is your picture on TV?" Summer's question made me look up from my coffee. The morning news was running a story about Stephanie's case, complete with photos of our family. "Turn it off," Omar said quickly, reaching for the remote. He'd stayed over last night, sleeping on the couch, our first attempt at rebuilding some kind of normal for Summer's sake. The doorbell rang before I could answer. Faith stood on the porch, looking uncharacteristically worried. "We need to talk, now." In the kitchen, she spread out several printouts. "Stephanie's been busy from jail. These posts started appearing on social media last night." I scanned the pages, my hands shaking. Stephanie had somehow orchestrated a smear campaign, posting elaborate lies about me, accusations of drug use, infidelity, even claiming I'd threatened her life. "Can she do this?" Omar asked, his face darkening as he read. "She's supposed to have no contact with us." "She's using other people," Faith explained. "Former friends, distant relatives, anyone who'll help her get revenge. The good news is, this violates her bail conditions. The bad news is, the damage to Presley's reputation is already spreading." My phone buzzed with a text from Summer's school principal. "Need to discuss recent developments. Please come in this morning." "It's starting," I whispered. "She's trying to turn everyone against me." "Not everyone," Omar said firmly. "I'm calling a press conference right now. It's time I told the public exactly what kind of person my mother is." Faith nodded approvingly. "I'll contact the media. We need to get ahead of this." 2 hours later, I stood beside Omar in front of a dozen news cameras. He gripped the podium, his knuckles white. "My mother, Stephanie Mann, has spent decades manipulating those around her," he began. "She stole millions from our family business, drained my daughter's college fund, and attempted to bribe court officials. Now, she's spreading vicious lies about my wife, Presley, lies designed to destroy our family." He pulled out bank statements and court documents. "These prove my mother's crimes, but they don't show the emotional damage she's caused. She tried to take my daughter from her mother using false accusations. She betrayed everyone who trusted her. And now, from jail, she's continuing her campaign of destruction." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Ray, are you saying your mother's recent social media allegations against your wife are false?" "Completely false," Omar stated. "And we have proof. My wife agreed to take a drug test this morning. It's negative. We have surveillance footage disproving the alleged threats. Every single claim my mother has made is a lie." Another reporter. "Will you be pressing additional charges?" "Yes," Faith stepped forward. "We're filing for a permanent restraining order and pursuing civil damages for defamation. Mrs. Mann's actions demonstrate an ongoing pattern of malicious behavior." After the press conference, we picked Summer up from school. The principal had seen the news and apologized for doubting us. In the car, Summer was unusually quiet. "What's wrong, sweetie?" I asked, turning in my seat. "Katie's mom said we can't have playdates anymore because of what's on TV." Her lower lip trembled. "Are we bad people now?" Omar pulled the car over and turned around. "No, baby. Some people are just confused right now because Grandma is telling lies. But the truth always comes out. Remember how we talked about lying having consequences?" Summer nodded solemnly. "Well, Grandma's lies are having big consequences, but we're going to be okay because we're sticking together and telling the truth." That evening, as Summer played in the backyard, Terrence called with an update. "Stephanie's cellmate just came forward, says she's been bragging about orchestrating the social media attacks. We got it all on record." "Will it be enough?" I asked. "The DA's adding witness tampering and violation of bail conditions to her charges. She's not getting out anytime soon." After hanging up, I watched Omar pushing Summer on the swing. He caught my eye and smiled. A sad, complicated smile that acknowledged everything we'd been through. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Despite everything, I opened it. "You think you've won? You've taken my son, my granddaughter, my reputation? But I'm not finished. Not by a long shot. S." I showed the message to Faith, who immediately forwarded it to the DA. "She's digging her own grave deeper," Faith said. "Let her keep making mistakes." That night, after Summer was asleep, Omar and I sat on the porch swing. "I never thanked you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For fighting, for not giving up on our family, even when I was too blind to see what was happening." I looked at the stars, thinking about consequences and truth and healing. "We're not done fighting yet." "No," he agreed, "but at least now we're fighting together." The jail's visiting room was colder than I expected. Stephanie sat across from me, her designer outfit replaced by an orange jumpsuit, her perfectly styled hair now limp and graying at the roots. "I'm surprised you came," she said, her eyes still sharp despite her diminished appearance. "I almost didn't," I replied, placing a thick folder on the table between us. "But you need to see these before tomorrow's hearing." She glanced at the folder. "More of your so-called evidence?" "Bank statements from the Cayman Islands. Turns out your old friend Margaret was more than happy to turn over records of your offshore accounts once the FBI got involved. She gave them everything, Stephanie." Her facade cracked slightly. "Margaret wouldn't—" "She did. Just like your cellmate talked about your social media campaign. Just like Judge Howard's clerk confessed to taking your bribes. Everyone's abandoning ship, Stephanie. You're all alone now." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "What do you want?" "I want you to stop. Stop the attacks. Stop the lies. Stop trying to destroy our family. Sign these papers." I pulled out a document. "It's a voluntary termination of grandparental rights. Sign it, and I'll ask the DA to consider a plea deal." "You want me to give up my rights to Summer?" Her voice rose sharply, drawing the guard's attention. "You gave up those rights when you tried to take her from me, when you stole her college fund, when you taught her that lying and manipulation were acceptable." Stephanie's hands trembled as she reached for the papers. "Omar agreed to this?" "It was his idea." I watched her flinch at those words. "He's in therapy now, working through the damage you've caused. We both are. I only wanted to control everything, everyone, but it's over now." The door opened and Faith walked in, right on schedule. "Mrs. Mann, I see you have the papers. Shall we proceed?" Stephanie stared at the documents for a long moment. "And if I refuse?" "Then we go to trial," Faith said calmly. "With all our evidence, including the new offshore account information. The DA is talking about 15 to 20 years, plus additional charges for the witness tampering and bail violations." I watched as Stephanie's world crumbled around her. Her pen hovered over the signature line. "Summer asked about you yesterday," I said quietly. "She wanted to know if bad people can become good people again." Stephanie's head snapped up. "I told her yes, but only if they truly want to change. Only if they're brave enough to admit their mistakes and try to make things right." The pen scratched across paper. Once, twice, 3 times. Faith quickly notarized the documents. "It's done," Stephanie whispered. "Are you happy now?" "No," I answered honestly. "I'm sad that it came to this. Sad that you couldn't just love your family without trying to control us." As Faith and I stood to leave, Stephanie called out, "Will you tell Summer? Tell her I'm sorry? When she's older, we'll tell her everything, the truth, all of it, and she'll make her own decisions about forgiveness." Outside the jail, Omar was waiting in the car. "Did she sign?" I handed him the papers. "Yes, it's over." He studied his mother's signature, tears in his eyes. "I never thought... when we were kids, she was controlling, but this..." "I know." I squeezed his hand. "But we're breaking the cycle. Summer will grow up knowing she's loved for who she is, not for what anyone wants her to be." That evening, we had a small celebration, just the 3 of us. Summer didn't know about the papers or the jail visit. She just knew we were having pizza and watching movies in our pajamas. "Can we build a blanket fort?" she asked, already pulling cushions off the couch. "Of course," Omar replied, grabbing more blankets from the closet. As we sat in our makeshift fort, Summer snuggled between us. My phone buzzed with a text from Faith. "DA agreed to plea deal. 10 years, no possibility of early release, plus full restitution." I showed Omar the message. He nodded slowly, then pulled Summer closer. "Daddy, you're squishing me," she giggled. "Sorry, princess. I just love you so much." I love you too, and Mommy, and our fort. Can we sleep here tonight? I caught Omar's eye over her head. He smiled, a real smile, perhaps his first genuine one in weeks. Sure, I said. We can sleep in the fort. Later, with Summer asleep between us, Omar whispered, "Thank you for saving our family." "We saved it together," I replied. "And we'll keep saving it, every day, by choosing love over control, truth over manipulation." Outside our fort, the world kept turning. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more healing, more work to rebuild what Stephanie had tried to destroy. But tonight, in our little blanket castle, we were safe. We were together. We were free. 3 months after Stephanie signed away her rights, I sat in our family therapist's office, watching Summer draw pictures during her session. Omar sat beside me, our shoulders barely touching, a new normal we were still figuring out. "Summer, can you tell me about your drawing?" Dr. Sarah asked gently. Summer held up her artwork. "This is our family, me, Mommy, Daddy, and our dog Max." "We don't have a dog," Omar whispered to me. "Yet," I whispered back, making him smile. "I notice Grandma isn't in your picture," Dr. Sarah observed. "How do you feel about that?" Summer's crayon paused mid-stroke. "Daddy said Grandma did bad things and had to go away, like when I have to go to timeout, but bigger." Dr. Sarah nodded. "And how does that make you feel?" "Sad sometimes. But Daddy says it's okay to feel sad, and Mommy says sometimes people we love make bad choices." A knock at the door interrupted us. Faith entered, looking apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, but this couldn't wait." She handed me a letter. Stephanie's appealing her sentence. My hands shook as I read. Omar leaned in close, his breath catching. "She's claiming diminished capacity, that her maternal instincts drove her to protect her family from my harmful influence." "Summer, honey," Dr. Sarah said, "why don't we go look at the fish tank while your parents talk?" Once Summer was out of earshot, Faith laid out the situation. She's hired a new lawyer who specializes in psychological defenses. They're trying to paint her actions as stemming from mental illness rather than malice. "Can they do that?" I asked. "They can try, but we have mountains of evidence showing premeditation. The offshore accounts, the systematic theft, the calculated attempts to destroy your reputation. None of that suggests diminished capacity." Omar stood abruptly, pacing the room. "She's still trying to control everything, even from prison." "The appeal hearing is next week," Faith continued. "The DA wants both of you to testify about the emotional impact of her actions." "What about Summer?" I asked, watching our daughter tap on the fish tank glass, giggling as the fish darted away. "The judge has already ruled that she won't have to testify. Your statements and Dr. Sarah's professional assessment will be sufficient." That evening, after Summer was asleep, Omar and I sat on the back porch. The spring air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden. "I started writing my testimony," Omar said quietly, "about growing up with her, the manipulation, the guilt trips, the way she'd pit my sisters against each other. I never saw it clearly until now." "Your sisters are testifying too?" He nodded. "Jessica found old diaries from when we were kids, pages and pages of Mom's manipulation, the way she'd reward us for spying on each other, punish us for showing independence." My phone lit up with a text from Terrence. "Got something big. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. The next morning, Terrence spread surveillance photos across Faith's desk. These were taken last week at the prison. Stephanie's new lawyer visiting her. He pointed to one image. "Notice anything strange?" Faith leaned in. "She's passing her something under the table." "A phone," Terrence confirmed. "We tracked it. Stephanie's been coordinating with outside allies, planning what happens if she gets out, including plans for Summer." "She's not getting out," Faith said firmly. "This proves she's still manipulating, still scheming. No judge will buy the diminished capacity defense when she's actively plotting from behind bars." The appeal hearing came faster than we expected. I sat in the courtroom, listening as Omar testified about years of psychological abuse. His sisters followed, their stories weaving a pattern of control and manipulation that spanned decades. When it was my turn, I spoke about Summer. Your Honor, Stephanie didn't just steal money or try to take my daughter. She tried to steal Summer's chance at a healthy, honest life. She taught my 6-year-old that love comes with conditions, that truth is negotiable, that family means control. The judge reviewed Terrence's new evidence, her expression growing darker with each photo. Stephanie sat at the defense table, her face a mask of maternal concern that no longer fooled anyone. The appeal is denied, the judge announced. Furthermore, given the new evidence of continued manipulation and planning from prison, I'm adding an additional 5 years to the original sentence. Outside the courthouse, Omar hugged his sisters, all of them crying and laughing at once. Summer, who'd been with her aunt, ran to us. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked, oblivious to the weight of what had just happened. "Yes," I said, catching Omar's eye. "Ice cream sounds perfect." As we walked to the car, Summer skipping between us, Omar squeezed my hand. "You know what this means? We're really free now." "Free to be messy and imperfect and honest," I agreed. "Free to be a real family." "With a dog?" Summer asked hopefully. We laughed, and for the first time in ages, the sound held no shadows. "Here's to 1 year of freedom." Omar raised his glass, clinking it against mine. We sat on our back patio, watching Summer play with Max, the golden retriever we'd adopted 6 months ago. 1 year since the appeal failed, I corrected. 1 year since... The doorbell interrupted us. Faith stood on our doorstep, holding a thick envelope. "You need to see this." Inside, she spread out a series of letters on our kitchen counter. These were intercepted by prison security. Stephanie's been writing to Summer's teachers, her dance instructor, even her pediatrician. She's using her old friend Margaret's return address. "I thought Margaret turned against her?" Omar asked, scanning the letters. "She did. These are forgeries. Stephanie's gotten creative in prison." Faith pulled out another document. "But that's not the worst part. She's been writing to Summer directly." My heart stopped. "What?" "Letters addressed to your parents' house, where Summer sometimes stays. Your mom found them hidden in Summer's backpack yesterday." Omar slammed his fist on the counter, making us jump. "What did they say?" "The usual manipulation, telling Summer that Mommy and Daddy are keeping her from her loving grandmother, that they're the bad guys. Classic parental alienation tactics." I ran to the backyard. Summer was still playing with Max, laughing as she threw his ball. She looked so innocent, so unaware of the poison her grandmother was trying to feed her. "Summer, honey," I called. "Can you come here for a minute?" She bounded over, Max at her heels. "What's wrong, Mommy? You look sad." I led her to the kitchen table, Omar joining us while Faith hung back. "Sweetie, did you get any letters recently? Maybe at Grandma and Grandpa's house?" Her face fell. "You found them?" "But she said it was our secret." Omar knelt beside her chair. "Princess, who told you to keep secrets from us?" "Grandma Stephanie. She said..." Summer's lower lip trembled. "She said you were lying about her, that she loves me more than anyone, and if I told you about the letters, you'd take them away." I fought back tears. "What did you think about those letters?" "They made my tummy feel funny, like when I tell a lie and know it's wrong." She looked up at us. "Are you mad?" "No, baby." Omar pulled her into a hug. "We're not mad at you. We're mad at Grandma Stephanie for putting you in this position." Faith stepped forward. "We need to file another motion. This violates multiple court orders." Summer's eyes widened. "Is Grandma Stephanie in more trouble now?" "Yes," I said honestly, "because what she did was wrong." "Remember how we talked about safe secrets and unsafe secrets?" She nodded. "Safe secrets are like surprise parties. Unsafe secrets are ones that make you feel bad inside." "Exactly. And asking you to keep secrets from your parents is never okay." Later that evening, after Summer was asleep, we met with Faith and Terrence in our living room. The coffee table was covered with Stephanie's letters. "The prison's launching an investigation," Terrence reported. "They found her connection, a guard she'd been bribing with commissary items. He's been fired." "We're pushing for solitary confinement," Faith added. "No male privileges, no visitors except her lawyer. She's proven she can't be trusted with any contact." Omar rubbed his face tiredly. I can't believe she's still trying to control everything, even after all this time. Control addicts don't just stop, Faith said gently, but we can stop her from hurting Summer. My phone buzzed, a text from my mom. Found more letters hidden in Summer's old dollhouse, bringing them over tomorrow. We should get Summer back into therapy, I suggested. Help her process this. Omar nodded. Dr. Sarah has an opening tomorrow afternoon. I already called. The next morning, Summer came to breakfast clutching one of the letters. Can I tell you something? Always, I said, pulling her onto my lap. I didn't believe her letters. They didn't sound like the grandma I remember. They sounded mean. Omar joined us at the table. What do you mean, princess? She kept saying bad things about you and Mommy, but I know they're not true. You don't lie to me, and you let me have a dog, and you don't make me keep secrets. She paused. The old grandma wasn't like this. I exchanged glances with Omar over her head. Our daughter was wiser than we'd given her credit for. You're right, Omar said. The grandma you remember changed. She made bad choices that hurt our family. Like in my books when the villain thinks they're the hero? I couldn't help but smile. Exactly like that. Summer hopped down from my lap. Can we burn the letters, like a goodbye ceremony? That evening, we stood around our fire pit, watching Stephanie's letters turn to ash. Summer threw in the last one, then turned to us with serious eyes. I don't need a mean grandma who tells lies. I have you, and Daddy, and Max, and that's better. As I held Omar's hand and watched the flames consume the last traces of Stephanie's manipulation, I realized our daughter had given us all the closure we needed. Ready for your first day? I asked Summer, adjusting her backpack straps. The morning sun cast long shadows across our front lawn, and the air held that crisp feeling of early autumn. I'm nervous, she admitted, clutching Max's leash tighter. We'd registered him as her emotional support animal, and the school had agreed to let him accompany her on special occasions. Today, definitely qualified. Omar came out carrying her lunchbox. Remember, princess, you don't have to do this if you're not ready. Summer straightened her shoulders, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. I want to. Dr. Sarah says talking about it helps other kids understand. Today, Summer was giving a presentation to her class about family dynamics, manipulation, and the importance of speaking up when something feels wrong. It was her idea, sparked by a classroom discussion about bullying. Mrs. Peterson says, lots of kids have complicated families, Summer continued. Maybe my story will help them feel less alone. We arrived at school early. Summer's teacher, Mrs. Peterson, greeted us warmly. The guidance counselor will be here for the presentation, and we've notified all the parents. As other students filed in, I noticed several familiar faces. Kids who'd stopped coming to playdates during Stephanie's smear campaign, now back in Summer's life. Their parents had apologized one by one as the truth came out. Good morning, everyone, Summer began, standing at the front of the class with Max sitting proudly beside her. I want to tell you about something that happened to my family. I held Omar's hand as we watched from the back of the room. Summer spoke clearly, using the child-friendly language Dr. Sarah had helped her practice. Sometimes people who say they love you try to control you with secrets and lies. That's not love. That's manipulation. My grandmother did that to us. She hurt our family by stealing and lying, and then she tried to make me keep secrets from my parents. A boy raised his hand. Like when my dad's girlfriend told me not to tell my mom about her staying over? Exactly, Summer nodded. Those kinds of secrets make your tummy feel bad because you know they're wrong. She showed the class the artwork she'd made in therapy, drawings of her feelings before and after Stephanie's letters, before and after telling the truth. The scary thing about manipulation is that it can come from people we love. But the brave thing is speaking up, even when it's hard, even when it might hurt someone's feelings. After the presentation, other kids shared their stories, about divorced parents who bad-mouthed each other, about relatives who asked them to keep secrets, about feeling caught in the middle of adult problems. Mrs. Peterson wiped tears from her eyes. Thank you, Summer. You've helped more people today than you know. In the hallway afterward, Omar pulled Summer into a tight hug. I am so proud of you, Princess. So, so proud. Can we get ice cream? She asked, making us laugh. Some things never changed. At the ice cream shop, Faith met us with news. The prison board reviewed our petition. Stephanie's being transferred to a facility across the country. No contact orders remain in place, and they're implementing new screening procedures for all her communications. Good, Omar said firmly. Summer, how do you feel about that? She considered the question while licking her double chocolate cone. Sad, but okay sad. Like when you finish a book and the bad guy doesn't win, but you still feel a little sorry for them. That's very wise, Faith smiled. You know, you helped a lot of people by speaking up. The prison found letters she'd been trying to send to other families too. Really? Really. You stopped her from hurting other kids like she tried to hurt you. Summer beamed, then turned serious. Daddy, remember when you said sometimes family is who we choose? Yes, Princess? I choose you and Mommy and Max, and ice cream. Ice cream is definitely family. We all laughed, and I caught Omar's eye across the table. The shadows that had haunted him since confronting his mother's betrayal were finally lifting. Outside, Summer ran ahead with Max, stopping to pet every dog they passed. Omar slipped his arm around my waist. You know what I realized? He said softly. We didn't just survive my mother's manipulation. We're stronger for having faced it. All of us. I watched Summer chattering with an elderly couple about their poodle, her face bright with joy and confidence. She's going to be okay, I said. Better than okay. Because she knows the difference between real love and control, Omar agreed. Because she's brave enough to tell her story. Summer ran back to us, grabbing both our hands. Can we go to the park? Max wants to play fetch. As we walked together, our daughter swinging between us, I realized that sometimes the happy ending isn't about everything being perfect. It's about being whole, being honest, and being brave enough to choose love over fear, truth over manipulation, and healing over hate. That's the story Summer would tell now. That's the legacy she would carry forward. And that was worth everything we'd been through to get here.